These are the 1cc notes on multiplying and dividing integers. The first part of these notes is just a fun way to help you remember when you have a positive or negative answer. So in life, love is something that is positive, and hate is something that is negative. Now, when you love to love something, if you love loving something, that means you love. So that will help you remember that if you are multiplying or dividing a positive by a positive, then you will get a positive answer. When you love to hate things, or if you're multiplying and dividing a positive and a negative, then you'll get a negative answer. So if you love to hate, then you hate. When you hate to love, then you hate. If you hate loving things, that means you hate things. So if you multiply or divide a negative by a positive, you'll still get a negative. And finally, if you hate to hate things, if you hate hating things, that means you love things. So if you're multiplying or dividing a negative by a negative, then you'll get a negative answer. Turn to the next page and we'll practice it. So for this first question, we have negative 6 times 7. So a negative times a positive, which means hate to love. If you hate to love things, then that means you hate things. So you'll end up getting a negative answer. You'll get negative 54. In question 2, we have a positive times a negative. So love to hate. If you love hating things, that means you're negative. So 11 times negative 2 would be negative 22. For question 3, we have 4 times 9, a positive times a positive. So love to love, which means our answer will stay positive and it will be 36. In question 4, we have a negative times a negative. So that means we hate to hate things. If you hate to hate things, that means you love things. It'll end up being positive. So a negative times a negative will give you a positive 35. For number 5, we have a positive multiplied by a negative. So we love to hate. If you love to hate, that means you hate. So you end up getting a negative answer. 9 times negative 9 is negative 81. This works the same way with division. If you divide a negative divided by a negative, you end up getting a positive. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is positive 5. If we take a negative divided by a positive, that means we hate to love, that means you'll end up getting a negative answer, negative 5. 10 divided by 2, or a positive divided by a positive, will give us a positive answer, positive 5. A positive divided by a negative, or love to hate, will end up giving us a negative answer. We'll get negative 5 for the number 9. Try 10, 11, 12, and 13. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to check your answers. For number 10, the answer is negative 7. For 11, the answer is positive 7. For 12, the answer is positive 7. And for 13, the answer is negative 7. Turn to the next page. Now we are going to practice multiplying integers by using a number line and some real-life examples. So for question 1, it says use the number line provided to model the product of negative 6 times 3. If we're multiplying negative 6 times 3, that means we're adding negative 6 3 times. So on the number line, we'll go from 0 back to negative 6 and do the same thing 3 times because we're multiplying it by 3. That will give us an answer of negative 18. Question 2 says to give 3 examples of how to get a product of negative 36. So we need to think of 3 different ways to get that same answer. The way you can do this is by taking 9 times negative 4, negative 4 times 9, or 12 times negative 3. Those are just 3 examples that would work, having 1 negative times 1 positive. For question 3, it says, describe what 9 times negative 2 means, and then give the product. 9 times negative 2 is the same as negative 2 times 9 because of the commutative property, which means you're taking negative 2 and adding it 9 times. The product is negative 18. Question 4 says Henry withdraws $16 from his bank account every day for 9 days. Write an expression that would help you find the amount of change in his account at the end of 9 days, then simplify. Well, because he's withdrawing $16 from his bank account, that would be a negative $16, and that's happening every day for 9 days. So negative 16 times 9 would give us an answer of negative 144. Question 5, we're multiplying 3 numbers. Because of the order of operations, we need to start on the left side and go right. So the first thing we're going to do is multiply 8 times negative 6, which would be negative 48. Then we're going to multiply that product by negative 2 to get a final answer of 96. Please turn to the next page. Question 6. A football team loses 7 yards on each of 3 consecutive plays. Find the total change in yards from where the team started. Show all work. Well, if they're losing 7 yards, that would be a negative 7. And it's happening 3 different times in a row. So you would have to take negative 7 times 3 to get an answer of negative 21. Question 7. Simplify negative 10 times 3 using the number line below. If we're taking negative 10 and multiplying it by 3, that means we're adding it 3 times. So we'll go back to negative 10 and do the same thing 3 times until we get to our answer, negative 30. Question 8. During a board game, one unlucky player must move back 9 spaces 5 turns in a row. What is the integer that represents the player's movements for those 5 turns? Well, if they're moving back 9, that would be negative 9, and it's happening 5 times in a row. That means we need to take negative 9 times 5 to get the answer negative 45. Notice how we have a negative times a positive, which gives us a negative answer. Question 9. Are 6 times negative 12 and 12 times negative 6 the same value? Why or why not? Yes, they are both the same value. They're both equal to negative 72. This is because we're always taking a negative times a positive, and the commutative property tells us that we can switch the order of our multiplication problem and still get the same answer. Question 10. Is the product of negative 5 times negative 7 times 3 positive or negative? How do you know without multiplying? If we have 2 negatives and 1 positive, that means we have an even number of negative signs. That will give us a positive answer because 2 negatives always make a positive when you're multiplying. Please use these notes to help you with the 1DD homework.